and welcome back to our live stream participants. So I just pulled this quotation up in the brunch hour for you. Just came across it and I thought I would share it because it was so much, it was very aligned with what we were talking about this morning. And out of all the different quotations that I love and resonate with, Nisargadatta is my absolute favourite. And oh, how's that? Now it's on. Okay. And also Einstein quotes. Einstein quotes get overused a lot, but I more in the last year or two have been researching a lot of science and scientists and quotations from scientists, and there's some fabulous ones out there as well. But I find it hard to beat Nisargadatta because he just is able to perfectly nail the human condition. He's a wonderful, wonderful master. I don't know much about him actually, but everything he says I very much resonate with. So what we're going to do this afternoon, my slide, now we've sorted one technical thing, we've created another, as is often the way, that my slide sorter now doesn't work. Yeah, if you could just forward. There we are. So you have to stay in position, Karen, and I'll have to give you the nod. John can do it. So yesterday we looked at the map, and I just wanted to remind you of the shape. If you move to the next slide, then you see that we've taken the idea of the map for individuals and then extrapolated that to be the map for organizations and society and planet. And this just shows you how it's not only the same principles that operate right across that scale, but the levels and the categories as well. So I just wanted to show you this as a way to marry up all the different levels that we talk about. And we often talk about what is our influence as individuals on other aspects of society, and we often feel that we don't have much agency to affect bigger and greater levels than our individual self. And this just is a visual representation of how our influence scales. So as we widen, our consciousness is working its way out from the center to the periphery. Of course, that's not how it works. There isn't an actual direction. But if you imagine that consciousness is expanding out to those outer levels and taking in more and more of reality, more and more, getting closer and closer to the truth of how things are, as you undertake that expansion, imagine the ripples in your pond are going out, out, out on an individual level. Because of the scale of influence, you're automatically causing the predisposition for that on other levels. And that is how we affect other levels. And we can have, so even though we don't see, by the time you get up to the right-hand side on the global level, unless you're somebody like Elon Musk, who, you can actually see your own efforts at work in the world and the difference that's making, it's very unlikely that as an individual, maybe you meditated on peace or love every morning for the planet, you may not be able to see that feedback in the world. So the bigger the scale, the less obvious the feedback. It feels like it's just basically if you were to throw a cup of water into the Pacific Ocean, you wouldn't be able to identify your cup of water once it hit the ocean. But this is trying to give some sense of reassurance that that influence is out there and it is doing something, but it's hard to measure. And so that's why we try to measure the influence that we are having on ourselves and our immediate environment, because it's much easier to measure your influence on an organization than it is on a society or a planet. And if you know through measuring, mapping and measuring and evolving, that you're expanding your consciousness, you know that you are influencing those scaled up environments likewise, even though it's harder to measure and see your exact influence. Now also, we have such a thing as individualized consciousness and choice and responsibility on an individual level, but as you go up, it becomes collective. So at Findhorn, not one person can say, I am responsible for the atmosphere and the energy at Findhorn. Yeah, it is a collective environment, but you will contribute to that environment. And maybe in times past you've had somebody here who was maybe a bit prickly or a little bit challenging or difficult, and you can feel that influence in the collective environment and notice it. And you can also notice it by its absence when it goes. So you can notice it on that collective level, but obviously as you go up through the scale, it's harder and harder to notice and therefore measure and see. So we try to bring the sense of choice, responsibility and contribution down onto an individual level, but know that it's affecting other levels simultaneously. And on a collective level, if a lot of individuals come into a similar intention and gain what they call coherence, where they all resonate at the same frequency with the same intention, then many experiments have been done which show this social coherence, what they call social coherence. And then social coherence contributes to, obviously, global coherence. So some of you know that I'm on the board of HeartMath Institute, which is a scientific research institute in the States. And there they have spent the last 25 years conducting experiments, initially into individual coherence. Then they worked a lot with social coherence and also global coherence. And I'm also on the steering committee of the Global Coherence Initiative. And they've developed scientific measuring devices which were originally developed at NASA to measure this coherence, measuring the Earth's electromagnetic field and showing the impact of human intention on that. So I've been part of experiments where we all walk around strapped up with heart monitors, which have to stay stuck onto you for 2 weeks at a time. And all the data is getting fed. You're part of an intention group which meets once a day. And then there are similar groups. There was one in New Zealand, one in South Africa, around the world. And then they're collecting all the data. And then at different times, those groups, we would link up consciously. And what effect does that have? So they were measuring our individual coherence. They were measuring the small group coherence. They were measuring the interconnectedness between the groups. And then they were seeing if any of that has an effect on the global scale. It's absolutely fascinating. They've also done research with trees, doing networks of trees and showing the coherence and pheromones between trees. That communication system is already known. But they've been measuring the coherence and the electromagnetic fields of the trees and how they use that field to communicate. Absolutely fascinating. They've done it with horses, they've done it with dogs. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating stuff. I don't know if this is still top secret, but it's just about to not be. But they've also done experiments on DNA, looking at how DNA is transmitted through the field. So how you can transfer DNA from one site to another without any physical transportation system. Absolutely remarkable stuff. So we're just on the cusp of incredibly exciting times in terms of our learning, and science, which was such a sort of a bastion of kind of walled off thinking and principles for so many years, has kind of made those walls porous now and is engaging in some very exciting research, which is really enhancing and contributing towards our understanding of ourselves and what's possible in a very wonderful way. Okay, so maybe you can go to the next slide. I think it's, okay. So now I just want to show a short clip from YouTube that I came across a few years ago. And you probably all very familiar with Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And he was in a concentration camp in the war and observed, similar to how we was talking about earlier before brunch, about challenging circumstances and what happens to our sense of self and our sense of meaning and purpose when we're in those environments. Yeah. So now we need to navigate to the video. If you haven't come across him or you haven't come across him for some time, I encourage you to refresh your memory. There are many, many clips of him on YouTube. And he is a wonderful man. He has a very, very thick German accent, which personally I like. But you just have to listen carefully.
Regarded their main goal and concern in life to make a lot of money. I'm quoting literally, make a lot of money. And you know what the top class, the top category, we say category, what do you say? Category was among, excuse me, but I know I am speaking a marvelous accent without the slightest English. Now, you know what the top category was? 78% of these American youngsters were concerned, as they expressed it themselves, with finding a meaning and purpose in their lives. So there's a realistic view on man. And you won't believe it. Gray hair, my age, I started taking flying lessons recently. Do you know what my flying instructor told me? If you are starting here, wish to get here, say east, heading for this, and you have a crosswind, you will drift and you will land here. So you have to do what we pilots call crabbing, he told me, C-R-A-B, crabbing. You have to head for north of this airfield, and you have to fly that way, you see, as if you headed in this direction. If you are heading here above this airfield, then you will actually land here. But if you head for here, you are landing here. This holds also for man, I would say. If we take man as he really is, we make him worse. But if we overestimate him, it's premature, your applause, you will soon know why. If we seem to be idealists and are overestimating, overrating man, and looking at him that high, here above, you know what happens? We promote him to what he really can be. So we have to be idealists in a way, because then we wind up as the real realists. And you know who has said this? If we take man as he is, we make him worse. But if we take man as he should be, we make him capable of becoming what he can be. This was not my flight instructor, this was not me, this was Goethe. He said this verbally. And now you will understand why I, in one of my writings, once said, this is the most apt maxim and motto for any psychotherapeutic activity. So if you don't recognize a young man's will to meaning, man's search for meaning, you make him worse, you make him dull, you make him frustrated, you still add and contribute to his frustration. While if you presuppose in this man, if in this so-called criminal or juvenile delinquent or drug abuse and so forth, there must be a what we call spark, yeah? A spark of search for meaning. Let's recognize this, let's presuppose it, and then you will elicit it from him, and you will make him become what he in principle is capable of becoming.
Very good. I wonder if we can switch over now to the system we had before with the slides. So that, okay. Does that mean John or Karen still have to navigate it?
Yes.
Okay. I
I
like a straightforward answer to a straightforward question.
Is that the one you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, back, sorry.
Back, sure.
Back again. There we are. So, I hope you've all got your grids with you from yesterday. What we're going to do now, you saw on the schedule yesterday that we're going to try between now and Tuesday morning, we're going to try to work our way through the 12 indicators along the top of the grid. Okay? So what I want to do is give you a little bit of concept, then I want you to be able to about each one. Then I want you to be able to review your answers on the grid. Then we're going to meditate on each one. And then I want you to record all of your insights. Okay? And we'll just go through it, each one. Now, so it means that there's going to be sort of 12 cycles of doing this, one after the other. And just so that doesn't get deadly dull, or you forget where you are and it all starts to get merged and muddled. If we can just break it up with just checking whether there are any questions on each one before we move on, or we can just do some stretching or something, you know, just to create a little conjunction. So if we can now go forward, please, John, 2 slides. That's it. Okay. So we're just going to, first of all, talk about purpose. And does anybody want to hazard a definition for purpose?
Reason for being.
Oh, I like that. That is exactly the one that I use. That's why I like it. Ram Dass once said, I like so-and-so because he always agrees with me. Reason for being. Does anyone else have a different take that they use for purpose?
I agree with that one. You could say goal as well, I suppose.
Goal. Yeah, goal, if a purpose... I'll put it in brackets because goal for me is more like a purpose statement or a mission statement. So it's kind of more of a mission. Whereas purpose is a little bit more nebulous. Objective. That would come under goal, wouldn't it? Be similar to goal. And we needn't be afraid if the definition is quite nebulous. I mean, it's a specific definition about something which is quite nebulous. So we don't need to worry that purpose feels big and unwieldy and can't be distilled down into a sound bite. It shouldn't be able to be distilled into a sound bite, because then it loses its power. The beauty of purpose, the power of purpose, comes from the fact that the energy is so close to the source. So if we think of an actual spring, yesterday we said that purpose is like an actual spring that arises out of the ground. That spring is, without the spring, there is no river. And one could argue there might not even be any sea either, you know, that it is carrying that impetus. It is so close to the source that it is the place where energy comes into being. Now, it's hard to imagine energy coming into being, because we said yesterday it is perpetual, it cannot be destroyed, it cannot diminish, it is in a constant state of abiding. But if you look at the action of subatomic particles, they actually arise and pass away many, many, many times per second. That many times per second. Don't ask me to say what that is. So energy particles are arising and passing away that many times per second, but there has to be some kind of framework going through the middle that they arise out of and disappear back into, like that. Yeah? And that's how it gives you that ability for diversity, for growth, for all of life can only come about through that mechanism. Because imagine if they came into being and stayed exactly as they are, they would be nothing, no imprint could be possible, no influence could be possible. So as they come into being, they're constantly giving you a fresh, clean canvas. It's like having this many days in 24 hours. Yes? Imagine if days were that short. Yeah? Then you'd get lots of sleep, but also you would have the chance to refresh. So that's what the energy is doing. So as the energy comes into being, it's coming from the source, which is the actual design itself. We use the word source, funnily enough, for both God, don't we? Divinity, and also for where water comes out of the ground, the source of the river. Yeah? The spring, it springs forth. And so it's interesting we use that terminology. So as that energy comes forth, it is fully loaded with all of the properties that it is encoded with. And it means that it is at its most potent, at its most powerful. And because the energy has this structure that we've described, it has these qualities that we've described, the structure and the qualities predispose the function. Yes? So why is it that birds can fly? Not just because they feel like it. They have to have the structure and the mechanism of the wing to be able to do so, yes? And obviously a lot of aerodynamics involved there. So, and obviously they have that instinct which predisposes them to want to fly. So purpose is the energy that is erupting from the source, fully loaded in a pristine form, and it is wanting to express its nature. Yeah? The energy always wants to express its nature. It never withholds that. So if you can imagine, like a spring coming out of the ground, it doesn't have good days and bad days. It doesn't say, oh, today I just cannot flow. It's just more and more and more of it. So imagine energy doing the same thing, just giving more and more and more. And that abundance of qualities is then giving forth an action which becomes its function, its nature, and that is an expression, yes? So purpose is the closest, having a sense of purpose is the closest we come to connecting with that source and having that sense of we are this raw energy with all this potential that has the ability to give and share. So a sense of purpose connects you to that energy. That's why it is so potent. That's why so many, marketing agencies have now latched onto it. They know that instinctively, when we, maybe you didn't feel the same, but whenever I hear Viktor Frankl talk, I just feel so uplifted by him and what he's saying, because not only is he funny and passionate and just right on accurate, but there's something so instinctively right about what he's saying. And when we hear or feel a sense of purpose, we connect with that rightness because we're connecting with the source that it's attached to. So for us, I would say our purpose is our reason for being. It is why we exist. It is why the energy exists. Why does life exist? Why does anything exist? It is our reason for being. And that can become a goal with an objective, but that comes later. The spring that rises out of the ground just wants to express its true nature. Yeah? So I encourage people not to create very elaborate purpose statements. That can come as a mission statement if you want to. If we've got time after we've done purpose, vision and values, that's the time to fashion a mission statement, because your mission statement should reflect your purpose, your vision and your values. Yeah? Now, if we also look at the different levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Purpose resides here, vision resides there, and values reside there. Inspiration and motivation, those are what we're going to cover today. And purpose, vision and values together are an expression of our higher self. So if we think about our energy bodies, our energy field, purpose relates to our 7th, vision the 6th, no accident there, and values our 5th. Okay, so it's all tied in with the energy system and the frequencies at which these ideas, if you like, reside at. Okay, so that's why the mission statement can be fashioned after purpose, vision, and values, because collectively those three represent your higher self. Okay? And if you want, a mission statement should guide you in life and always set you on the right track and have very minimal opportunity to get sidetracked or despondent or distracted. And the ideas and suggestions that your higher self puts forth are always in your best interests and taking into account who you are, what you're capable of, what your life path is. So that's how we can fashion a mission statement. So coming back to purpose, purpose is like the spring. And we don't need to have a very tight statement around purpose. If we have a nebulous sense of something, that can be enough. So has anyone done a lot of work with purpose and feel that they have journeyed with it a lot and feel like they know what their purpose is? Does anyone have a really clear, walk around with a very, very clear purpose statement for their life? Okay, 3 spontaneous purposes emerged.
Well, to strike equilibrium. To strike equilibrium in all, between your self-consciousness, your higher consciousness and subconsciousness,
Yes.
so that you unify into one being.
Aha.
That's what we try to do.
Aha. So your purpose is around unification.
Yes.
Yes. God, he's read the homework.
As a teenager, I kind of felt the planet was in peril, and that's kind of been my guide. And I currently head up sustainability in a big company, but that I've never kind of intended to get to that place. It's just the purpose brought me to that place.
Yeah. And would you say that is your purpose or that's your mission?
I probably haven't differentiated them, but it's a strong felt sense of something that then emerges as those actions and
Yes.
those choices.
Yeah, strong felt sense. I like that. Thank you.
Well, I had a near-death experience when I was 5 and another strange experience, and I'm aware of this black covered area that you talk about, and my purpose is to try and expand to be all and everything, and try and connect the higher level with the lower level and unify, just as you sort of said.
Yeah. So discover, unify, explore, expand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes.
I think it's not something to do with nourishment.
And I like what she said. I think it's something to do with. That is perfectly acceptable as a sense of mission. It doesn't have to be, I know that I'm going to give nourishment to this person on this day at this location. It doesn't have to be that. That can come later when we get down into individual thoughts and actions. So just having a sense. Now, what were the sort of internal prompts that made you think something to do with nourishment? And let me ask you a question which might clarify it. Is it because you want nourishment or because you have it and you feel you want to share it?
I feel it's something deep inside which is a natural part of me which I'm contributing to the whole. It's
Okay.
just a part of me.
Yeah, lovely. Would anybody, if I was selling purpose up here, and I had a purpose labelled world domination, would anyone be buying? No. Why not?
It's hierarchical.
Hierarchical? Why doesn't it resonate?
Oh, power seeking.
Power seeking, yeah. But what is it about, okay, what about if I held up and said, you can replace Bill Gates tomorrow? Anyone want that one? Come on, one of the world's richest men? No? Helicopter rides everywhere, every day? Just to go to the bathroom? No? Okay. No takers. What is it about his life that doesn't feel like it resonates with your purpose? Greed. Well, he might have a different take on that, you know, all his work with the Gates Foundation. But yeah, it doesn't resonate with you because it doesn't feel like it's, okay.
There would be too many expectations.
Too many expectations. Ooh, that's a big one, isn't it? Yes. So, what kind of purpose would you be happy with? Okay, Mother Teresa. Anybody want hers? No. Oh, I'd have to be Catholic.
Not Catholic, but the things she did.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so you're going to take here. What about Jesus? Anyone want his life? Crucifixion involved, I'm afraid. Think before you raise your hand. It's not as good as it sounds. Yeah, is it worth 2,000 years of adulation? We think not. So okay, you don't want any of those options. What do you want?
I want it to come from me, my own source.
You want your own source. You want your own source. What else do we want? That really just, this is the thing about purpose. It doesn't have to be defined, but we know what it's not. Yes? We might not know the exact sentence, but we know what it's not. And then when we feel it, and this is why I say all you need is a gesture. You don't need like a ironclad declaration. You just need a gesture and you know, oh, yes. So if you had to say, give me one word.
Freedom.
Thank you. You jumped the gun, but that's good. Freedom. Okay, I'm going to ask you all to come up with one word, and you're so ahead of this game. Truth. You're only allowed to have one thing out of life. What is it?
Fulfillment.
Did you say? Oh, I thought you said money or worry. Hang on. Fulfillment. I never know whether it has one L or two in the second. One. Thank you. Harmony. And well, there was one other came up.
Union.
Harmony.
Empowerment.
Empowerment. Lovely. Anyone who hasn't?
Jeddah, there's a live stream contribution.
Oh, lovely.
And I guess the word would be fun, but I'll just read what Jane says. She says, I uncovered a thought, in quotation marks, that I had when I was about 6 weeks old inside my mother, which was my purpose is to have fun.
Oh, lovely. She's my kind of gal. All right, fun. Remember, it's your reason for being. You can only have one thing from life. What would it be?
Joy.
Joy. Keep those 3-letter words coming because we've only got a little bit of space.
I like understanding.
Understanding. Oh, I like understanding too. Is there anything that those of you who haven't contributed, is there anything that isn't up there already that you feel, you're sitting there quietly feeling but not saying?
Don't know if we can find the exact word. Something like awakening.
Awakening. Is it as in awakening as in realization or awakening as in the exploration? So is it the adventure and the exploration, or is it the kind of knowingness and seeing part of awakening?
I think I'm having trouble with it being for myself.
Well,
Like if it was expansiveness or something.
yeah, but
That sort of awakening, that it would be useful to other people.
of course, that's a very important point. So the reason I said you can only have one thing is because I didn't want people to give me these great big long paragraphs. So it was a way of trying to, distill the mind. But it doesn't mean that your purpose is only for you, not at all.
So it would be probably something like expansiveness.
Okay, expansion. Right, and you'll notice that none of those words are associated with anything like a selfish endeavour. Huh? So we never choose a purpose when we're really connected into that energy, which is arising and passing away and wanting to share and express itself. When we're connected into that energy, we never ever choose something which is selfish or destructive or greedy. It's always, and that's why the phrase, I guess, higher purpose came around, because then I guess they thought people do have a lower purpose, but a lower purpose is not a purpose in my eyes. Purpose, the word purpose is reserved for a reason for being. So we are somehow, if you connect with any one of those, if we said, God has just announced on Twitter this morning that is now finally in 2017 going to declare what this is all about. And if God picked any one of those, you wouldn't be that pissed off, would you? You could live with any of those. So there's something about purpose which connects us to our source. It feels right. It feels like there's a big internal yes, and it feels not only that it works for us, but that it works for everybody. Yeah? And there's something about these states which are naturally empowering. Yeah? So purpose should make us feel that this is possible. These should not be remote ideals. That's what's, the too much of religion gives you these massive remote ideals and says, unless you're at this remote ideal, you're a forsaken sinner. Well, I think there are more options than that, surely. We have to be able to connect into these. We have to be able to taste them and live them. They have to be able to be part of our everyday life. We don't want some remote, futuristic spirituality. You don't necessarily want to wait till we get to the pearly gates, if indeed we are heading that way. So, purpose connects us to something that helps us realize our truth and our source, helps lift us up, helps to show us what's possible, but it is a felt sense. It's not going to come as a technicolor vision with a perfectly wordsmithed statement underneath. It doesn't come that way. It just comes as an impulse, as a gesture. It comes forth from our being. So that said, let's have a look at our grids. Let's have a look at the Now look at the position of the purpose indicator. And look where you place it. Okay? Now think of your green line, which I sometimes call the 50th percentile. Look at your green line as the currently accepted version of what you think you're capable of. Your red line is what's getting in the way and holding you back. Now, the derailers, they seem real, but they only create limitation if we believe in them. So just look at your red line, look at the kind of experiences. Remember that your red line was recording actual experiences of going within and connecting to how you thought your being was. And these derailers can seem real, but remember that what you're recording there is not what is real. You're recording what seems real. And that state, that red line state, can only be a reality if you believe in them, you don't question them, and you accept that that's who you are. Now look at your blue line state. And now, after what we've spoken about with looking at the source of energy in purpose, you can see that your blue line state is actually a calling from your higher self. So see the results that you're putting into your grid as your being trying to speak to you, trying to express itself, reveal itself. And although we know the green version very well, we know that there are other aspects of us which reside within our being which don't get as much airplay. Now, moving from one level to another, so moving your green line up is the key here. Yeah? So your everyday experience is moving up. Yeah? And if your everyday experience moves up, what happens to your blue line? Well, if you become your blue line, then that your blue line is your green line, and your blue line moves up. Yes. So your blue line is like your higher self out in front, as it were, with the little carrot, leading you on and giving you ideas about what you can become. And so it's always feeding you your best ideas. So your blue line is the line that you want to listen to, because your blue line knows you, your higher self knows you, it's you. It's the aspect of you which is always connected to that eternal wisdom, isn't cut off. It's not possible for the higher self to have blacked out windows. So your blue line is leading you forward. It's making suggestions about what you can think, intend, believe. So notice your belief systems in that blue line state are different to the ones in the green line state. And the trick is to face and deal with and disabuse yourself of the notions that are tied up in your red line state. So look at your red line state and just consider what kind of thoughts, what kind of beliefs, what kind of intentions operate in that red line state that don't exist in that blue line state. And you can see right there the difference in the way you use your being, where you place your consciousness. Oh, look at that, the sun has come out.
Can we alter these now, or do we wait?
I would wait. I would wait till the end, because on the last day we're going to do remapping, and then you can set a new version. By that time you'll be more familiar with the grid, you'll be more familiar with yourself, and so we'll do one at the end. If you think one is just completely wrong because you didn't kind of understand the process, you can redo it. There's spare ones over there. But if it's just a matter of, oh, I understand more now, let's wait till the end and we'll remap. Yeah. Okay, what I want to do is just do a short meditation on purpose, and then when we come back together, we'll record our insights. So as we use the grid, I want us to not just look at like mental answers that we've objectified and put over there, but see it as almost like our living being is speaking back to us, like a feedback mechanism. Now these are going to be short and sweet, but it's just for us to be able to connect with purpose specifically. And just see how intentionally and steadily you can bring your attention into the moment and occupy your being, that being which exists across that spectrum. And imagine you are staying within your being, so you can know it intimately, but you're also simultaneously looking at yourself. So maybe you can visualize hovering above yourself and looking down upon yourself. There you are, meditating in the beach room at Cluny. And ask yourself, what is this particular beingness for? Why does this person exist? And remember, we're not looking for specific action steps or career or anything like that. We're just looking for a much deeper, broader, more foundational sense of why this being, any being, exists. And then release the image of you looking from above and come back solely into navigating your being through conscious presence. And then allow yourself to step into that blue line relationship to purpose. It's almost like you step forward, you can step through an energetic pane of glass into that blue line state, where you feel more empowered, facilitated, you feel more is possible, you feel closer to that source energy, and you feel that the source energy is able to express itself, express its innate nature, and share through your being. Your being is in service to the expression of these innate qualities. And just feel this is actually happening. This is not just an idea. And notice what it feels like to allow yourself to be in service to this energy which is seeking to express its nature. And how do our thoughts and beliefs need to change to allow that? To allow our being to be influenced by this eternal energy instead of a more individualized, personalized agenda. And notice what you give up at this stage in terms of an individualized, personalized agenda. You gain in terms of connection, alignment, flow, and feeling imbued with the qualities and the power of the source. And whenever you feel ready, just pick up your notepads and pens and just record any insights that you've seen. anything which was revealed to you or occurred to you regarding your purpose. And if anybody would like to write something but doesn't have paper, there are books here. You just raise your hand and I can give you something. And at the end of our time together, I will send you the materials that we've worked with. So I will send you obviously the map and the grid in both forms. We'll send you some questions to help you fill in a map and grid by yourself. And I'll send you some of what we call the application questions, which are, prompts to help you record your insights so that you can undertake the exercise by yourself. And it may be that your insights relate to something that you've seen you want to do with your life, but it doesn't have to be that way for purpose. It can be something about connecting to purpose helps you to understand yourself better. It's given you an added dimension on understanding yourself and how you live your life and the conditions that are necessary for you to feel connected and empowered. Karen, is the tea break at 3:30 today? 2:30.
I'm finding myself being all the more nebulous, really. So what sort of is coming up for me was sort of all of that and more, that just potential. So I'm less clear, but perhaps more certain.
Ah, I love that. Ooh, I'm less clear but more certain. Love that. What a fabulous expression. Good. I would say for now, this is just the first indicator. There's a long journey to go through. I would say stay with that sense of being less clear but more certain. And follow the journey through, because we're going to do vision and values and inspiration and motivation today. Then tomorrow, by the time we get around to mindset, then we're looking at the specifics of what thoughts work for that whole journey, the person that we want to become and be, that blue line. So it may be that things crystallize as they come down, yeah? So, and it may be that you get to the end and you have a different sense of self, which is still less clear but more certain, or it may be that certain ideas and thoughts start to occur to you. When you're recording your insights, I mean, you can write longhand if you want to, if that works for you, but just try to distill the essence of what you want to say and capture. Does anybody want to share what they've written? I'll take that as a no then. Okay, go. Oh, hang on, microphone.
I get a feeling when we are being born, we're completely limitless. We do not have any sense of limitation because we only know ourselves, and coming straight from the source, it's all good for us. And I guess purpose would be, after being born, we experience a lot of limitations and restrictions, and we get lesser and lesser in our perception of ourselves. So one purpose which springs to mind is to relearn what we were being born with, the sense of limitlessness, and get rid of all these limitations and just come to express what we're meant to be, our own self, our own essence.
Yes, yes, yeah, very beautifully put. And you know, what is really in practice, what are those limitations? They are thoughts that we have believed in the mind. So when we're a baby, we can't fashion those thoughts, and therefore we don't experience the result of them. And as you grow, you say we are exposed to more and more limitations, we're exposed to more and more ideas which we then believe and take on as our own. In many cases, not in all cases, where we adopt the limitations of that were expressed in our environment, sometimes forcefully so, and sometimes through inference. The way social coercion works is through inference, social norms, social memes. So it's not always direct, some of it's just implicit. Let's move on to vision. Vision is very closely related to purpose, but it is a different creature. So just have a look at your grid and just refresh your memory on what you put for vision. Now, vision is an interesting one because as we go through the grid, we are encountering both structured and unstructured bands. Imagine a human being that was all skeleton and no flesh. Imagine a human being that was all flesh and no skeleton. Yeah? You need both. You need the structure and you need the unstructured. Yeah? You need the mental rational and you need the amorphous creative. So you need both elements. You know, that is the yin and yang of life. So purpose is not really a structured band, it's very unified, but vision, it's no surprise, is an unstructured band because it's very hard to fashion an image by structure alone. Otherwise you end up with one of those, drawings that is in, you can only do it in a grid. Now, if you think of an image which for you is incredibly beautiful. Yeah, see, I was going the same place, or sunset, It's an unstructured, all images are unstructured. Picture quality is a different language for our being. So we can use the verbal language, which is a very structured way of communicating, and we know the limitations that has too. But think of pictures as also like another language that your being speaks. And it's actually a language that we are comfortable with before we get comfortable with language. As babies in the crib, we are looking and seeing long before we are communicating or understanding or even being able to write sentences. So the picture image is a very powerful mode of communication. Now, we all know the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So vision, images, pictures, can convey a lot more information than words can. Or, for instance, you could write about that sunset, But the person reading your description, even if you were a Booker Prize-winning novelist, the reading about the description is not the same as seeing the sunset. Yeah? So there's something about that visual which connects to us and feeds us on a level that language-based communication can't. And we need that language within our being in order to thrive. We need both. We need the structured elements, we need the unstructured elements. We need to find the balance between the two. We can see, some people make a living out of highly structured disciplines, and some people make a living out of highly unstructured disciplines. I always think, I love poetry, I always think poetry is a beautiful blending of the two, because poetic language is obviously our verbal written language, but it has this incredible ability to conjure image. So for me, poetry is a noble art because it's quite well balanced in that way. Although the sort of archetypal image of a poet is somebody who's very dreamy, but I don't know if that's exactly true anymore. Especially when you look at, what's that guy's name, the Rasta poet, Benjamin Zephaniah. Yeah, he's not dreamy, he's very grounded and down to earth. So in terms of vision, how does it serve us? Why is it an indicator in the grid? It serves us because the images that we entertain within our being are loaded with information for us if we take the time to extrapolate that information. So we need to give ample credence to that form of communication within our system. And also because ideas can be conveyed to us in an image that factor in many frequencies, many ideas, many considerations at once. So an image can contain a lot of modes of information in one go in a way that language would struggle to do so. Yeah? And the fact that there is also a pictorial element, as we know, images are the language of the soul. So it allows us to work from and express a side of our nature that verbal language alone cannot. Now, why does it come directly after purpose? Because we all, without realizing it, carry an image. For everything we think, there is a corresponding image. We may not realize it. We may think that thought just passed through and didn't leave any impression. But we know that thoughts leave impressions because they form also a picture in the energy circuits of our being. Those sensations that they form are a picture. They're a matrix of something. Now we can create images for ourselves that help us to see our purpose. Now they may be created as in they're visualized, they're constructed rather than gifted, but that doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is just lead us through a little exercise to see if that sense of purpose as it's flowing, that source from the stream, it flows first into a pictorial element before it then goes on to the structured band of values and starts to clarify and define itself. Now the beauty of that is it's much easier for us to relate to an image, to carry an image, to be reminded by an image. Yeah? So for instance, whenever you want to remember something, they say, oh, just picture something or create a symbol for it. So there's something about imagery that is easier for us to hold, easier for us to read, and easier for us to remember the information that's contained within it. It has a very strong educative effect on our being. So this image that we're going to see if we can see is, don't worry whether you think this is, the angels have parted the clouds and handed it over to you, or whether you've engineered it out of your imagination. That doesn't matter at all. we're just going to try and see if we can find an image that expresses and reflects that sense of purpose.
Can I ask one question? Is the vision fruit of the purpose?
The fruit of the purpose. Not exactly. It's probably the advertising campaign of the purpose. Yeah, it's the poster. Yeah, to remind us. Because purpose is nebulous, whereas the vision is starting, it's not concrete and fixed, but it's starting to convey something. Now, you might be surprised at what you see, because when you said, I'm less clear but more certain, that's fine for purpose. With vision, you can't have a vision of nothingness. There's always a vision of somethingness. So your purpose is starting to reveal itself. The vision is the first time you see the direction that your purpose is taking. Yeah? So it reveals itself first as a sense, then as a visual, and then you, through that, can decide which values it is expressing and reflecting. Yeah? So let's just see. So use your breath to get centered in the present moment. And connect with that emerging sense of purpose. Why am I here? Why do I exist? Why do any of us exist? Why does life exist? Why does existence exist? And when you've connected with that, just hand over your being to notice what you see. If there were an image, some kind of visual, maybe a complete picture, maybe not, maybe just something which is barely formed, maybe a symbol. Just see if there's any kind of pictorial element which suggests itself to you in relation to purpose. And it's important when we are working with imagery that we don't let the mind stomp through with hobnail boots. Just keep any kind of commentary or comparison, deduction, analysis to one side. And just give your being permission to converse in the form of images. And you'll notice that an image does not have to be elaborate in order to convey a lot of information. We can deduce the meaning and the information very readily with a sense of knowingness. And the same image can mean two things to two people. The understanding of the image is unique. And then notice how you feel to inhabit whatever it is you are seeing. So if you were to live into the vision you saw of your purpose, how would that feel in a felt sense? You as a being are able to live that purpose, not in the distant future, but to enact and empower it now in this moment through the choices you make and the path that you take. So just notice that the vision is like it's not just a symbol of future hope, it's a message that comes right into the present, delivers encouragement and a sense of possibility. And then whenever you feel ready, just take up your notebook and record your insights. Just record what you've seen, even if it's just a glimmer of something, write it down. And write down any meaning or message or information that you felt you gleaned from that. And you may want to draw something instead of write something. And if you think it's difficult for you guys as individuals to get hold of a purpose and a vision that is, coherent, that you could stick to, imagine what it's like when you move up the scale into group environments. Trying to align all of that. I was just thinking about the work I do in organizations. So many organizations to go into, you interview maybe like 20 of the executive leaders. You say, okay, what's the purpose of the company? And they'll give you a different answer. There's not that coherence, and so therefore there is no coherent vision, and they're wondering why further downstream they don't know where the river is, so they can't collect water, and no one's getting nourished from it. So purpose and vision, they seem nebulous, but they are incredibly powerful aspects of what we draw on. And a vision is particularly helpful to have because it gives us so much hope. It fills us with inspiration. It is a reminder. And your vision is never in the form of wishful thinking. It's really important to know that your vision is actually a very real encouragement. The existence is not so perverse to show you an image of something you can never be or never attain. What would be the point of that? It would just feel bad. Your vision is always showing you what is possible for you. And as such, it's very encouraging. That's why it's important to have a vision. And don't worry if it doesn't, spring to life in your inner sight. You can go away and do this quietly and for longer in your own time. If you want to work a bit more with this. Because we have very real and human needs like toilet breaks and tea breaks in the here and now to attend to. Okay, so whenever you feel ready, just go for tea break. I believe it is now, and then when we come back, we will continue our journey.